Yes, you know what? I will note all these questions and I will ask them later on. It's going to have a Canadian flair for sure.
All right. Sports. Talk. Live.
Do you guys even know where Vancouver Island is? It's not even close to Toronto. Okay, let's get things going. Good afternoon and welcome to the 13th episode of the Unnamed Sports Show here on the Sports Talk by Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365, van and anything like that. I am your host, of course, Joshua Griffith. I'm very happy to announce, if you didn't already know, that sports are back. Woo! So that was probably a little bit loud and sorry about that, Lee. But MLS, NHL, MLB, NBA, it's all coming back. So if you don't know what this show is about, let me get you a little bit caught up to speed. I'm going to bring you the latest in the sports news and scores, sometimes even during the shows as it's live. I'm actually watching the Toronto Bluejays lose right now to Washington.
You have 4.
And also, I am going to bring you some great guests. So today on my show, I have Lukas Weese of Weese Sports and intern at the Hockey News. We're also going to be talking some Blue Jays baseball, the Raptors, and PGA Tour golf, as Lukas pretty much covers basically everything, which I absolutely love. It's a truly perfect guest for my show. So if you missed it last night, the Vancouver Canucks got underway with their first preseason game. They had their bubble battle with the Winnipeg Jets. It was a pretty competitive Canucks, hockey game. It was nice to see it on TV, and Vancouver probably deserved a better result than the 4-1 loss that they got at the hands of the Jets. But hey, this just in. Connor Hellebuyck is really, really good. So thankfully, the Minnesota Wild don't have that level of goaltending. Alex Stalock and David Dubnyk are not up to the Vezina caliber that Connor Hellebuyck is. He looked like he hadn't skipped a beat. Some of the Canucks players who look like they hadn't skipped a beat, Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, obviously, Quinn Hughes, they all look pretty good. Michael Ferdinand played on the third line and in some pretty limited minutes. He looked okay. He helped Vancouver get their only goal in the third period. Antoine Roussel was able to jam it home after an initial Adam Gaudette shot came out from behind the net. Was stopped by Hellebuyck, and good old Rooster was there to jump on the rebound. So I wrote a recap of the game last night, so you guys can check that out at sportstalkline.com if you want more of that. What the biggest takeaway that I will take from the Canucks game, and it wasn't really who was on the ice, it was who wasn't on the ice. And shotgun Jake Virtanen got to enjoy some live hockey, as we all did, but he was watching it from the press box or, in the back room or wherever they're allowed to watch it when you're not on the ice. This is going to be throwing some fire on a very flammable Canucks fan base already. And we've seen it last night after the game. We've seen it all throughout today. It looks like we may never see Jake Virtanen in this series, or we may never even see him in a Canucks jersey again. Twitter and media speculation are fun. So I'm going to get you caught up with some more Canucks news after my guest. And things get real for the Canucks on Sunday night at 7:30 Pacific time, as they will play the Minnesota Wild, as most people know. So I'm going to stay in bubbles, as the Whitecaps miraculously made it through to the round of 16 in their bubble. Was a bit of a fairy tale, Cinderella story, or Shrek story, whatever you want to call it, depending on which one's your favorite fairy tale. But in the end, it ran its course after the huge 2-0 win last week against the Chicago Fire on Thursday. I had Mark DeSantis on the show. He was kind enough to join me, so that was great. And, there wasn't really too much pressure moving forward against Sporting Kansas City. It didn't help the fact that David Milinkovic was ruled out for the team, and backup keeper Thomas Hasal had no backup. So Ali Adnan was actually the backup for the game that they played. There were 11 players that were normally should have been with the team that didn't travel or were out with injury, but they were able to give a really supremely dominant Sporting Kansas City squad, hold them to a 0-0 scoreline through full time. So that was nice to see. There was a lot of heads up after the game. The penalty kicks, they were terrible. But again, if you're going to take positives from things, nobody kicked it over the net like Kendall Austin did for FC Cincinnati. So I know Whitecaps fans were probably watching that one with a little bit of a chagrin on their face, but that was very nice to see. Thomas Hasal in his second MLS debut starting game and his second clean sheet hasn't actually allowed a goal in open time besides the penalties, but he was able to stop one penalty for Vancouver. That just wasn't enough. They got knocked out 3-1. They were able to return back to Vancouver on Monday, and obviously they're going to have to quarantine, as Mark Dos Santos said in his post-game interview after last game. They're, was asked what they're going to do when the season starts back again in August, later August, and he said, guys, we have to look at it 2 weeks at a time right now, because they have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So was trying to, wrangle up somebody from the Whitecaps for me, but they say, they're going to get some well-deserved relaxing time, which was a very nice media way of telling me to bugger right off and leave them alone. So the round of 8 is set. So we're going to keep bringing you coverage of that Thursday evening, which is tonight. If you're watching it live, if you're watching it later, then you might have already passed it, but the Philadelphia Union against the aforementioned Sporting Kansas City, Orlando FC, and a really dominant-looking LAFC meet on Friday. And the last 2 games are going to have to compete with all the other sports coming back Saturday evening. First, we got San Jose and Minnesota. And then closing out the evening, we have New York City FC and the Portland Timbers. So like I said, Sports Soccer is going to keep you up with everything that's happening in the soccer bubble. So make sure to tune into the website and hopefully have some more special guests from some of the other teams. As I don't know if anybody caught the last week's show. I had Felipe Martins from DC United after they unfortunately got eliminated from the tournament. So definitely going to be lots more soccer stuff. We had a lot of Major League Baseball news too. And I'm going to get you caught up with a lot more of that with my guest shortly here, Lukas Weese, who was kind enough to join me. He's a really busy day, and you'll understand why actually when we talk. So was going to get you caught up with that, but the Miami Marlins, they tested 16 confirmed cases, and that was just as of when I was writing this morning. They had their games canceled till Sunday, and then Thursday morning it was confirmed that 2 members of the Philadelphia Phillies staff had tested positive. So the Blue Jays were supposed to play the Phillies on Friday, and that whole series has been postponed. They're supposed to play the game Friday and then a real doubleheader, just back-to-back games on the Saturday. Rob Manfred, what are you doing, bud? The other leagues, they gave you a blueprint after months to plan, and you really failed miserably to provide the players and the staff with a safe environment to play. I don't know. Let's hope the NHL or the NFL can learn and kind of actually have a blueprint and plan set in place for when they want to start their season, because training camp here has already started for some teams. I said I was going to get into baseball a little bit more, and we're going to talk some positive stuff with Lukas as well, because Nate Pearson made his big league debut for the Toronto Blue Jays on Wednesday, and he had a pretty great outing. So, like I said, we'll get you caught up with that a little bit later. The weekend, as I've already been kind of alluding to it, is pretty massive for sports. Another league that is safely tucked down in the ESPN and Disney wide world of sports complex is the National Basketball Association. And if baseball gets canceled, I'm not going to lie, it's going to make things a bit easier on my PVR, but it's still going to be a really busy sports weekend if you're a sports lover like me. So things get going actually at 3:30 Pacific time, so in about 20 minutes here, as the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williamson will be taking on the Utah Jazz. And then after that, we have a big LA showdown in Orlando between LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers against a very healthy Kawhi Leonard and rested Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. So that's not a bad way to restart things. The Toronto Raptors will have to wait until Saturday to get things going, as they will play the Lakers at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. There's also a 6 game scheduled for Friday if you need some more NBA. Celtics play a bunch of other teams. And if you're not watching, either hockey all day long or NBA all day long, you can just flip between everything like I plan on doing. So the Canadian Premier League in soccer finally came out with some news. Kind of a lower league. You have to be more of a follower like I am for them to even maybe know of this league sometimes. But we'll get to a little bit of some publicity for the league after. But the Canadian Premier League, like I said, made a decision and an announcement on Wednesday that they were going to host a tournament in Charlottetown, PEI, and finish off the 2020 season in a tournament which will be known as the Island Games. That I'm sure has to be trademarked already, but I'm not going to worry about that. Each of the 8 teams, they're going to play every other team, and then the 4 highest seeds are going to move on and once again play all of the seeds in the second round, and the top 2 seeds are going to move on to just a winner-take-all kind of game. And I mentioned that there might be some more publicity besides One Soccer, that is the kind of rights holder and coverage. The company that covers it. It looks like there will also be some more media coverage from it. Unfortunately, not Sports Talkline. We're not going to have broadcasting rights, but hopefully maybe somebody like CBC or TSN or maybe Sportsnet is jumping on board to get us some more of those games. And that will be nice to see, because it really features a lot of young Canadian up-and-coming soccer talent that you wouldn't necessarily get to watch on your television if you weren't a One Soccer subscriber. I'm kind of hoping it's CBC at this point, and you got to think, considering right now they would be playing Olympics from the whole time, night and day, that they would be looking for a little bit more local coverage. I mean, you've already seen them with a lot of the U basketball stuff that they've been going on. So, going to get you caught up with a little bit more in those things after. But right now I want to switch gears and I want to have my guest Lukas Weese join me here. And so we talked a little bit ago, and I'm going to have Lee cue that up. And I hope you guys enjoy this, because we talked about a ton of sports. So I am happy to be joined by David Quadrelli, managing editor for the Canucks Army and co-host of Canucks Conversation. All right, so I'm joined now by Lukas Weese of Weese Sports, intern at the Hockey News, does YouTube videos covering the Raptors, Bluejays, bylines on for Sportsnet and PGA.com, golf.com, and PGA, just all over the place. They're all going to be in the bottom of the links. So you'll be able to find him there and find where he is. So first off, thank you for joining me, Lukas. How are you doing there in these times, staying safe and healthy and all that?
Josh, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on your show today. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with a Timmins citizen. Are you still a Timmins citizen?
Oh, 100% still a Timmins citizen, yes. To the diehard. I have to watch it. Obviously, my show kind of airs during their block as well, so I have to watch it after. But I'm still watching. I have a PVR for every day when I get home from work in case I missed it. But yeah, still loyal Timmins citizen to the end. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, no, because I hear Tim always say Josh said this. And I'm like, is this Josh like in the flesh? So it's great to be talking with you about sports.
I think I have a bunch saved on my PVR, but I want to do just like a Tim and Sid montage of all the times that they featured me on there, because I think I'd maybe get up to like 30 seconds or something now. So
it'd be a good content, man. Good content.
Yeah, and then I have to throw it on this one here on this show, and then get them to maybe join me one day. But so I wanted to kick things off with some Blue Jays news, but we have some more baseball news. It's like kind of a little bit more pressing. If you kind of want to get everybody caught up with what's happening this morning.
Well, it just shows you, Josh, how the virus has no schedule. And I think that's so important for your listeners to understand. And this morning, the Philadelphia Phillies were excited to be practicing at their home ballpark. Yesterday, the Blue Jays announced that they were going to play a doubleheader Saturday against the Phillies with their series finale Sunday afternoon. But then just a couple hours ago, Charlie Montoyo announces that they are postponing that series against Philadelphia because a Philadelphia staff attendant and another clubhouse personnel tested positive for COVID-19. So it's remarkable how you think of the Miami Marlins. They're the only team that has players testing positive as we know of at this point, 17 of their 30 players. But that one team has created this ripple effect affecting 4 or 5 teams, including the Toronto Blue Jays. So now there's a real scramble to determine, okay, do the Blue Jays stay in Washington, D.C. before going to Atlanta where they're scheduled to play next week? Do they go to Buffalo to practice? All of these questions are being asked, but once again, it just shows how complex this return is for Major League Baseball, given their protocols with social distancing and health and safety.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw with the MLS get a couple teams where they started getting high positive tests, and because of their bubbles and their protocols that they had, they were able to kind of lock things down. But just with the way that the MLB has decided to do things, I don't know if that's going to be an option, and this might not be really the end of the outbreaks that we're seeing.
No, and I think, I think with the bubble, it's been good thus far, but it takes one person, Josh, to screw it all up. One person that may not be in the bubble. They're you look at Florida, it's a hot spot right now. They get in contact with someone who has the virus. They go into the bubble, and then it all gets really screwed up. But with Major League Baseball, they're operating as if it's sort of normal times. They're flying stadium to stadium. I know there's supposed to be these health protocols, but if you're watching baseball like I am, Josh, you're seeing that a lot of these players aren't following the rules.
No.
They're huddled in dugouts. They're spitting. They're high-fiving, which is not great given we're in a pandemic right now. I understand it's human nature, of course. These athletes have been trained their whole lives playing baseball to operate in a certain way. But those normal activities aren't normal in this pandemic right now, and it's really affecting whether or not this season can actually finish.
And it's a shame too. And just what you were talking about the players. I mean, you saw it yesterday in the Blue Jays and Nationals game. Players they were kind of, or even when Charlie Montoyo, when he was talking to the umpires and stuff, like you can talk from a little bit farther back. They turned the mic. You can tell that they've turned the mics down for that, so you can't pick up everything that they're saying. So yeah, no, it's definitely trying times for baseball, but I do want to talk about some positive baseball stuff because we did have some yesterday. Obviously, Nate Pearson making his major league debut for the Blue Jays, and a pretty successful debut.
Very successful indeed, Josh. Nate Pearson's debut is nothing short of sensational. He pitched 5 innings, not giving up any earned runs, 2 hits, 73 pitches, 14 swings on strikes. And look, people may have seen their first dose of Nate Pearson last night, but this is someone who has just such a winning, burning desire. I had the chance to do a feature on Nate Pearson back in March for the Canadian Baseball Network, and I had a chance to speak to his high school baseball coach, Jeff Swimer, from Central Bishop McLaughlin in Florida, and he said how Nate may not be the flashiest guy on the mound. He may not be, that, charismatic, going crazy in terms of celebration, but he has a real burning inner desire to win. There's a real fire there. And that's what you want for the Toronto Blue Jays, Josh. We haven't won the World Series since 1993. We haven't been competitive in 4 or 5 years. You want guys that can win and also have the arsenal of pitches that Nate Pearson does. So a very successful debut for Nate and a lot more excitement to come, I'm sure.
One of the things I really loved about Nate Pearson's first start was he wasn't just cranking, heater fastballs, 99 fastballs every single. He was really using his curveball and his changeup effectively early in the counts to get ahead of batters, giving himself like it was almost a very veteran way to pitch for someone making his or MLB debut. Sorry, get my sports mixed up.
No worries. Yeah. Look, this is what makes Nate Pearson so special. This is someone who, on the radar gun in practice, has reached in that 100-mile-per-hour range. I know on a feature last night on Sportsnet, they were talking about how he may, go up to that mid-100s or even go to 110 maybe at one time, basically define what's possible in terms of a human arm throwing a baseball. But it's the arsenal of pitches that make Nate Pearson so special. Like you mentioned, Josh, like 30 of his pitches last night were sliders, and 8 of those were swings on strikes. So he can just deliver all those unique looks and really blank these experienced hitters. And we saw that when he got a couple runners in scoring position. It was like, okay, what's Nate Pearson going to do here? He found a way to get the guys out. And that 99-mile-per-hour fastball low and away on Carter Kaboom was just the perfect pitch. I know perfect gets used a lot, Josh, but that was a perfect pitch.
I think we both tweeted about that one right as soon as that one happened. We were both just like, wow. I really liked you mentioned it a little bit earlier, just about not having winning ways in Toronto for, 4 years, not having won, won it all since 1993. But one of the things I really liked, and it was just a little bit from Nate Pearson yesterday, was just that, desire to win, that little extra that we haven't maybe seen since Marcus Stroman. He got out of that jam and he turned and he gave a little fist pump. Like it wasn't anything giant, but just to see that he gets fired up over what game 5 in his first start.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was when he faced Robles. He was in a battle with him, and he gets Robles out, and you just give that little fist pump. And some pitchers like to give this sort of aura of they're robotic out there. They go out there, and nothing phases them, nothing affects them, and that's okay. I mean, to each their own. But you want to see some personality. And in a kid like Nate Pearson, 23 years old, showing that personality, it's just so refreshing to see. And I just think, look, he to me is going to fit in this rotation beautifully, especially given how well Hyun-Jin Ryu pitched and Matt Shoemaker pitched. And to me, the sky's the limit with Nate Pearson, just in terms of getting better and better at his arsenal of pitches.
Well, let's talk about the rest of the Blue Jays here. I mean, so we're 2 series in, 6 games now through the young squad. They're 3-3. What do you make of what we're seeing so far?
Well, this team is a lot more exciting than last year already. I know it's only 6 games in, but there's just a real excitement about this team. They could be 5-1, Josh.
Yeah.
That, to me, they've been in every single game thus far this season. I think, to me, what's impressed me is the starting pitching. Like, you go back to Hyun-Jin Ryu, you go back to Matt Shoemaker. They didn't get out, they went their time, they went their 5-6 innings, and then they got out of there to the bullpen. That's all you can ask for starting pitchers. And just keep in mind, they've only had 2 weeks to prepare for the 60-game season when normally they have a full 6 weeks to prepare. So just keep that in mind and just see how amazing it is. I think the front end of the relief pitching has been solid. Like I liked when they put Thomas Hatch and piggybacked, or Trent Thornton and piggybacked Ryan Baroque. I think that could be an option where Baroque gets piggybacked with some other pitchers who may not go as long, the 4th or 5th starters. But you look at a guy like Jordan Romano, Markham, Ontario native. He clocked a 98.6 mile-per-hour fastball last night.
Look good.
He hasn't given up any runs. Yeah, and just, again, has that real swagger about him. I know that last year there were glimpses of that brilliance, but he's showing that consistency even back from summer camp, that not only could he be a setup man down the road, he could be the closer down the road.
That would be...
I think, yeah, like I think that would just be amazing to see a Canadian in that spot. I think, to me, the question is just going to be now for Blue Jays manager Charlie Montoyo is just, you have all these guys, and I understand the importance of getting to see your pitchers. You have to do that. But it is a 60-game season, and you need to sort of firm up what the rotation is going to be and what the bullpen is sort of going to be, because you can't just be in those situations where you're more inclined to give a pitcher a chance to see what they've got and compromising your chance to win. You got to win, right? Those 2 extra inning games, certainly the Tampa game we should have won. But I think last night's game, if it wasn't for Max Scherzer, the Blue Jays should have won that game. So to me, I just think you're going to, give these guys a lot more chances to impress and firm up that rotation and who are the relief pitchers. That's key. And before I let you go, Josh, the hitting just, I think, across Major League Baseball just hasn't been up to speed yet. Like, a lot of guys are struggling in terms of hitting. And I think for the kids, Bo Bichette, who's been hurt the last few games, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Lourdes Gurriel, and Kevin Biggio, it's just that consistency. And I think we haven't seen that yet. I know Kevin Biggio had a good first series against Tampa, but seeing that consistency from their hitting, I think will be something that they just need to get used to. But that's just the fact that they've only had 2 weeks to prepare for such a short season.
And one of the things, unlike normal years with Major League Baseball, is it's not a marathon. This year, it is a sprint. So, and I do have to sprint through my topics with you, Lucas, because you are a very busy guy. So I want to move on, and I want to talk about switch gears. I want to talk about the Raptors. So I'm joined by Lukas Weese of Weese Sports here. So they kick things off on Saturday against the Lakers. What do you like about the Raptors' chances at repeating?
I think they have a good chance, and I think the Raptors' 2019-2020 season has been one of the best stories in sports. And I think the reason why they have a chance is because they're the defending champions, and that championship DNA that Kawhi Leonard taught this team last year has carried over this year. They're an experienced group of guys. And I've always said this, even during the pause, is when the NBA comes back to return to play, the experienced teams are going to have the best chance to win. And the Raptors are definitely that. They're very galvanized. They're very united in their goal to win another championship. And I think for me, my question with them is going to be their half-court offense. They're an elite defensive team. We all know that. Second in the NBA before the pause. But they're middle of the pack in terms of their offense. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Pascal Siakam, who's already taken a big step into that number one scoring role this year, Josh, is he just going to continue that? Because like last year, Kawhi Leonard was that guy. He was that consistent offensive presence. And just look at the Philadelphia 76ers series. He won them that series. They don't win that series without Kawhi Leonard against that big, long lineup of Philadelphia. No. So I'm curious to see Siakam. I think OG Anunoby is another one. This is an elite defender, but we've seen in the scrimmages his potential to attack the rim and shoot the ball with consistency. We know we're going to get a lot of positivity and success out of Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet and Norm Powell, the guard play. But I'm really curious in Siakam and OG. Can they continue that progression? I think that these games are good for the Raptors to get back into the swing of things. And just don't doubt Nick Nurse. I think he's the coach of the year this year for a reason. He's someone that maximizes the talent out of his players. And we're going to see schemes that I don't think we've seen yet before. And I just think that the Raptors have as good a chance as anyone, certainly in the Eastern Conference and even against the Western Conference teams if they make the NBA Finals to repeat.
And I think it's going to come down to, you mentioned it a bit. You know what you're going to get out of Kyle Lowry. You know what you're going to get out of Marc Gasol. It's going to come down to, I think, players like OG Anunoby, Norm Powell, Fred VanVleet, if they can take that extra step up and fill not necessarily everything that Kawhi provided, but a little bit of that. And if they can do it as a group, as a collection,
Mhm. Well, we saw that in the NBA Finals last year, Josh. And we saw how, while Kawhi was great, we saw Pascal Siakam put up 32 points. We saw Fred VanVleet put up double-digit points. I just think this year, though, the other teams have gotten better. Milwaukee, I think, has gotten better. Giannis is another year older and more experienced in the NBA, and he's shown in the regular season games against the Raptors that he can really penetrate in the transition game and get to the rim. Of course, the Lakers and the Clippers are really good teams out west, so it's going to be a challenge for the Raptors. I'm not saying that they're going to be a favorite, but you can't underestimate this team and what they went through last year, learning how to win. It'll just serve them well in such a unique, bizarre situation that is the NBA's return to play.
So you mentioned a couple of the other teams, the Bucks and the Lakers and the Clippers. Is that it? Does anyone else have a chance to win it this year?
I think it's going to come from those four.
Yeah.
I'd throw in Boston maybe in the East. Like, I think all Raptors fans, myself included, are really looking forward to a potential Raptors-Boston second-round series. I think that would be really exciting to see the matchup, like a Siakam-Jason Tatum matchup, like would be really, really cool to see. But yeah, like I just think the Bucks were clearly, to me, the best team in the NBA before the pause. I think LeBron James and the Lakers, they're just going to be motivated with everything that's happened, around the league this year to get that championship. LeBron doesn't have many years left. And you can't underestimate Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs. We saw what he did last year. I know there's issues right now with that team with Lou Williams and whatnot, but Kawhi is still Kawhi. He's still one of the best players in the league. And now with a lot of rest for him,
yeah.
he can definitely go the distance now and be expected to play those high 30, low 40-minute games. So I'd say Boston in the East, perhaps, maybe Philadelphia, because they're a big, lengthy team. In the West, probably Houston, but I'd be very shocked if the winner doesn't come from Bucks, Raptors, Lakers, Clippers.
Yeah, a rested Kawhi Leonard and presumably fully healthy. Jeez, that's going to be
scary stuff,
yeah,
Josh.
That is scary stuff. I'm excited for the NBA to tip off very soon here. So that should be good in our long list of reserves. So I'm joined by Lukas Weese of Weese Sports, and one of the things that he also covers, if I'm correct, is PGA. And you will be covering the U.S. Open Championship this year, will you not?
Well, it's the PGA next week, the PGA Championship, the U.S. Open. I'm hoping to. I haven't received confirmation yet, end of September, but it'll be looking like I'll be covering that remotely for the first time. So it'll be a unique challenge, to say the least. That, if anyone of your listeners has ever been to a golf tournament, it's quite an atmosphere, and it's always nice to be outside walking the course and seeing the best in the world play. But I'm looking forward to it. It's, live sports to cover. It'll be a lot of Zoom calls like this with a lot of the big players in the world. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting tournament. The first major next week, the PGA Championship.
It was a little bit more easy for me to adapt, I guess, because I just started and was able to just do a little bit of the scrum medias and all of that stuff before this started. So I'm so used to all of this Zoom stuff now.
Yeah, for me,
unfortunately,
it is what it is. Like, it's certainly, it's not what normalcy is for sure. Like, I certainly miss the human interaction and, those one-on-one opportunities to speak with people walking away from the scrum you just can't have with, a computer staring at your face. But it is what it is, and you got to make do with it. But I think the PGA of America is doing a really good job of providing the media with a lot of really unique resources, covering the tournament virtually to do a lot of unique video and writing articles. So you're going to see a lot from you on Twitter next week, Josh. A lot of golf will be on my Twitter timeline may throw in a Leaf result there if they can finally win a playoff series.
Well, that's fantastic. We got lots of golf fans on here and some Leaf fans, unfortunately, mostly Canuck ones, but there is some Leaf ones too. So
they're scattered everywhere, Josh. They're scattered everywhere, Leaf fans.
And so speaking of, Leafs, how about those Canadians that are making the push in the PGA right now? We're seeing people from like Adam Hadwin and Corey Connors to, younger guys like Mackenzie Hughes and Nick Taylor making the push now in tournaments. What do you think of all this Canadian talent that we're seeing?
Well, it's truly the golden era of Canadian golf. I know for me growing up, that moment was Mike Weir winning the Masters. That felt like a real watershed moment for the sport. But now we have Brooke Henderson on the women's side. She's the most winningest golfer, male or female, on professionally to win the most amount of tournaments. And it's funny because you speak to the four main male Canadian golfers, Adam Hadwin, Mackenzie Hughes, Corey Connors, Nick Taylor. And they say, like, the reason why we're inspired is because of Brooke Henderson. Like, Brooke Henderson has really lit a fire under them to try to get in the winner's circle and be up at the top of leaderboards on a consistent basis. For the first time ever, you have 4 Canadians this week representing Canada in the World Golf Championship in Memphis. So you're just seeing week after week the best Canadians in the world playing. And we've had Nick Taylor win Pebble Beach this year before the pause. Mackenzie Hughes had a couple runner-up finishes. So you're seeing more of them week after week. The difference now is, okay, you're consistently there. You just got to get from there to contending Sunday afternoon on the back nine and then eventually winning. It's easier said than done, Josh. Like, I know you and I grew up watching and following Tiger Woods. Tiger used to win minimum 4 or 5 tournaments a year when he was dominating.
Yeah.
But that's an anomaly, right? So it's so hard to win on the PGA Tour. But I think for golf fans in this country, you're seeing Canadians at every tour, PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, the Korn Ferry Tour. Shout out Taylor Pendrith, who he was looking to get his PGA Tour card this year. So just a real exciting time and a lot of unique storylines going into the majors and the FedEx Cup playoffs after that.
So you mentioned Tiger Woods and his runs, and is he ever going to win another major?
I thought he wouldn't, and then he did. So, look, there's no one as mentally intimidating as Tiger. He that fortitude separates him from even the younger guys now. We saw that when he won the Masters in 2019. But it's his body, Josh. Like, eventually the father time catches up with you and the body just can't do the things you want it to do. I think Tiger operates better in warmer climates just because of the back. It just handles the back a lot better. But Tiger, to me, does well at places where he's done well before. And TPC Harding Park, where the PGA Championship is next week, is no exception. He won a World Golf Championship match play there a few years ago and a President's Cup. So the beautiful thing is, because he knows those places, he can shape shots, he can visualize shots, and be very creative compared to the rest of the field. It's just hard for me, Josh, just because he hasn't played a lot of golf. It's hard for me to really say, like, he's coming in hot this week, he has a good chance. But it's Tiger Woods, maybe the best golfer of all time. So never doubt the big cat.
Okay, this is a pretty big sports weekend here. So there would be, I don't think, anything better than to have Tiger up in the leaderboard there on the Saturday and Sunday for everybody to enjoy as well.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, because normally the PGA with the PGA Tour schedule changes would be in May. Now it's back in its August time slot because of just the pandemic. So you could have the PGA Championship, throw in some hoops, pucks, WNBA, the list goes on, right? Baseball, like, as I said off air to you, Josh, it's a tsunami of sports. We haven't had this in 4 months, And now it's all coming back to us. So it's quite exciting for the sports fan.
It is a very good time for us sports fans. So I want to thank you again for joining me today, Lucas. And I know you're a really busy guy. You got lots to do today. So you've mentioned a little bit of what you're working on, but what else are you working on? Where can people find you and stuff? And what can they look for?
Well, Twitter is the best place at Weese Sports, at WEESE Sports. And I'm busy. I'm still doing my Wii Sports Quarantine Chronicles podcast. It's only now once a week because sports are coming back compared to the 5 times a week it was during the pandemic. But really excited about that, getting on a lot of unique guests as sports return. But I'm doing with Raptors Republic, I'm doing a lot of video and writing for them as the NBA relaunches and the Raptors begin their title defense run. Obviously covering the PGA Championship remotely next week, so that'll definitely occupy a lot of my time. And then I host a Bluejays post-game show, Bluejays Chatter, which you can find on YouTube and social media, as well as throwing in some Leaf stuff with the hockey news. So very busy, but I love it. The grind never stops, as I like to say, and it's going to be a really exciting time as sports return. And but I think one thing I'll mention, Josh, and I'll get back to you is, I think many of us are very excited about sports returning, but I think it's just important to keep in mind that there are other important issues that are at hand here that are way more important than sports, like Black Lives Matter, like anti-Black racism, and continuing those discussions. We can't just, again, close our eyes to that because sports is continuing. We need to keep those conversations up, as well as that the pandemic is still happening. And I'll go back to how I started. The virus doesn't have a schedule. And I think that's to keep in mind with all of this, that it could change within a day, an hour, etc. But that being said, continue those important discussions, but also enjoy live sports. So definitely trying to balance those two in my coverage with sports returning.
Well, that's fantastic to see. And like I said, you'll be able to find all of the links down to Lucas on Twitter and all of his YouTube places. So you'll be able to check that out down at the bottom there. So again, thank you very much, Lucas, for joining me. And I hope you have yourself a great day.
It was my pleasure, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. All right. So I am glad that you enjoyed that interview with Lukas Weese from Weese Sports, and a whole bunch of other things. Like I said, they're going to be down at the bottom so you can check them out. I'll make sure to tweet out all of his, where you can find him and all of his great stuff that he's working on. Check out his post-game Bluejays game reports. One should be coming out here shortly, as the Bluejays are losing right now 5-2 to the Washington Nationals in the bottom of the 7th inning here. So hopefully the Blue Jays can turn things around in this game, but I don't know if we're going to see that. And don't know when we're going to see Blue Jays baseball for the next little while, as their series with Philadelphia has been canceled. So I guess we're looking ahead to Atlanta on, I want to say, Tuesday. So got some PGA news, as me and Lucas were talking about the PGA. And, of course, Brooks Koepka is leading the field, is under -8 through 16 right now. Brendan Todd and Ricky Fowler are tied for second at -6. Top Canadian in the field, Mackenzie Hughes, like we were just talking about, tied for 15th at -2. Nick Taylor is tied for 25th, -1. Adam Hadwin's at +1, and Corey Connors sitting there at +2. So, lots of Canadians in the field for that. Want to get to talking more about the Vancouver Canucks game that happened last night. So I'm sure that a lot of people caught that, as the unrest for hockey in this market has been crazy during the break. So the Canucks, obviously they weren't able to pull it out. They lost 4-1 to the Jets. there's a lot of takeaways from the game, as I mentioned earlier in the show. Jake Virtanen not even dressing, seeing the ice. That is a huge talking point that I'm seeing all over the Canucks news waves and Canucks Twitter, and all the media markets are talking about right now. Is Jake Virtanen even going to play another game in a Canucks jersey with him being a pending restricted free agent? Is it worth it to just maybe trade him and package him with, say, a Louis Eriksson to try and dump the contract? Maybe dump both and save, $8 million or whatever it would be in cap space. So, and then you got the other side who are just the absolute Jake Virtanen lovers. Lila Virtanen, who, is probably Jake's biggest fan, all over Twitter asking Coach Green why he's not playing him. And Shuck and Jake, it doesn't look like we're going to get to see unless things change in the series against Minnesota. But as Jeff Patterson pointed out on TSN 1040 radio earlier, Travis Green really likes to go in practice with what he's going to go with in the game. So it'll be curious to see if Jake slots in on Sunday, and from also the amount that Coach Travis Green is just playing everything so close to his vest, we won't know lineups or if Jake Virtanen is going to be in the game until probably Sunday evening. The game is scheduled to go at 7:30 Pacific time, 8:30 Mountain time, and puck will probably drop at about 8:40, a little bit after. So it'll probably be about 7:30-ish before we know for sure if Jake Virtanen is. I know everybody was scouting the last game when their entrance video, when everybody came in to see who was in, who wasn't, who was a scratch. So Louis Eriksson was also a scratch last game, which meant Bo Horvat and JT Miller were forced into penalty killing duties. I don't really mind this considering it's a shortened, window we're looking at. It's going to amp up their already heavy minutes on the ice. So that could be a potential problem for injuries or anything like that. But I mean, if you don't want to have Jake Virtanen in, you don't want to have Louis Eriksson in, you're kind of left with no options when it comes to penalty killers. So Bo Horvat and JT Miller are going to have to kill penalties. I said earlier that, Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, they all looked sharp, didn't score or anything like that. But Brock Besser had a nice breakaway, and Connor Hellebuck made a nice move on his deke there to stop that. But they all look sharp. One of the questions that I think is going to be, people like Tyler Toffoli, JT Miller, if he's got the added minutes on the power play. Also, too, Travis Green has split up the very famous lotto line of JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, and put Tyler Toffoli on it with all of his success in the later half of the season. Again, I don't mind this move. It puts more, offense onto the second line with Bo Horvat. But if you're playing Bo Horvat and Tanner Pearson and Brock Besser in a defensive role against the other team's top team, and you're just expecting them to match out the minutes evenly, well, then what's the point of having Brock Besser on the line? It would almost be better to have him on a third line with, say, maybe Gaudette and Furlan, or just, load up the offense. But I don't know. For someone who always says that he wants to have three offensive, if you go back to Travis Green preseason quotes, when nobody was healthy and he didn't have Michael and it was always like, here and there, who he's going to patch in the lineup. He's like, it would be great to roll three scoring lines. Well, Coach Green, you have an opportunity right now to roll three scoring lines. You could do it. So I don't understand why Jake Virtanen sits on the bench. I mean, I understand your matchup games, but 18 goal scorer for you. I don't understand it. I don't mind Jake's antics off the ice if that's a problem for the organization. If his cap hit's a problem for the organization, I don't know. I don't mind that. But to say like, we're if you listen to the Travis Green post presser from Wednesday night's game, he mentioned that, he got asked, I forget who it was, I think it was Patrick Johnson or Jeff Patterson, or I could probably just keep listing off names and I'll eventually get the right person that asked the question. But they asked, why did you go with this lineup that you went with tonight? He said it gave us the best chance to win. And I mean, do you honestly, as a Canuck fan, if you're looking at the lineup that he fielded, do you honestly agree that that's the best lineup that gives the Canucks a chance to win? I don't know if I do. So Markstrom looked good. 3 goals on, the 1 empty net, but Markstrom looked sharp for somebody who hasn't played in a long time. It's going to be a really interesting series with the Wild. I can't see it going not the 5 games. There's going to be a lot of rust on the teams. It doesn't look like special teams are going to be as big of a factor as they probably should be, just because of the rust and the limited amount of practice time to work on things like that. I mean, if you only have 2 or 3 hours on the ice and, you want to do drills that include everybody, well, you're not going to spend an hour on power play and exclude 66% of the team kind of deal. So it's going to be interesting when we come to the opening games on Saturday and then the Canucks finally get going on Sunday. So I'm really excited for hockey to come back, as I am for the basketball game, which I don't have set up on my TV. I just have the baseball game. And I can't check the golf scores because Brooks Koepka wasn't through his round. But the Blue Jays have not caught up to the Washington Nationals at all. So this one looks like it, barring any kind of, I guess, miracle in the late innings, that the Blue Jays should lose another one here. See, now, if I was smarter, but I just set up my TV so I could watch it while I was doing this live, because normally I don't have live sports to watch while I'm doing my show. I have maybe some soccer from earlier in the day or from later on, but now I have actually like a ton of live sports to watch and be trying to track while I'm doing my live show. So next week I'll have to make sure that I'm really up to speed and I have my TV game set so I can see it. And I don't think I can is picture-in-picture a thing anymore? I don't know if it is. I have lots of time to play around with that after this though. But I'm going to try and get maybe like picture-in-picture on there and maybe set something other up. More screens. I need more screens with all the sports coming back. So as always, I want to thank you again for joining me here on the Unnamed Sports Show on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. Make sure that you like it down at the bottom. Subscribe to our channel. We're almost at 20,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome. We're going to have a big virtual party that I just decided we're going to have when we actually hit 20,000 subscribers. So, Rados, he's going to Malta. Never mind. He's going to send me a postcard, though. So, make sure to check out our website at sportstalkline.com. We got you covered with football, soccer, hockey, UFC, basketball, everything, all sports. We got you covered. Donate to our Patreon. Make sure to stay tuned next week, as I'm going to be going a bit off topic. Why, you ask? Am I going to be going off topic? Well, because it's my show. And I'm going to be having a band on that is a really big lover of sports. Next week, I'm going to be joined by a couple members of the band of the Matinee. So I'm still working out all of the logistics to that show and who will all be joining me. But we're going to be talking about Canucks. We're going to be talking about music. We're going to be talking about sports. So until next time, thank you for joining me on the Unnamed Sports Show. I have been your host, Joshua Griffith. And as always, make sure to love sports, all sports.